Mario and Mireya both crossed the border illegally as teenagers. They see themselves as different from migrants crossing the border today. When you hear Trump promise mass deportations, do you worry about them?
Yes and no. Because the ones that I know, they're doing good.
I don't want to be breaking up families, so the only way you don't break up the family is you keep them together and you have to send them all back.
Hi, welcome to Street Politics. My name is Reese Waters. Now, here in this space, we've had a lot of conversations about the growing support for Donald Trump in the Latino community during the 2024 election. Latino men at 44% to 54%. He won the Latino vote. Didn't just parse off a couple here and there, didn't increase his percentage. He actually won. Now, if we look at the Latino voting through the years, you see a slide happening each and every election from 2016 to 2024. And that only makes less sense when you realize how aggressively Trump has been targeting Latinos from 2016 to 2024. Apparently, as he's intensified his attacks, he only gets more support, even in the face of possible deportation.
Gelasio Velasquez is an undocumented mechanic who has worked in Houston for 25 years. He plays in this park with his two U.S. citizen children, ages 5 and 9, and stands by Donald Trump.
So you support Donald Trump because of the economy?
For the economy, yes.
His mass deportations?
No, it's not human.
Are you afraid that you could be deported in this mass deportation?
I'm not afraid.
Velasquez says he hopes Trump finds compassion for immigrant fathers like him who are not criminals.
You get deported, would you regret your support to Donald Trump?
No me arrepentiría.
He's saying that he wouldn't regret supporting Donald Trump. So you're really not thinking about yourself. You're thinking about your children and the future of your children.
Yes, I want the better for my children.
Because there was this feeling of invulnerability, untouchability, if you call it, whether it was because you've been here for a certain amount of time or whether you've achieved a certain level of success. For whatever reason, there was a line of demarcation which a great many Latinos drew between themselves and whoever it was that MAGA was referring to and talking about when they were holding up those mass deportation signs, or when they talk about the blood of the country being poisoned, or any of the litany of other slurs that he directed at immigrants to this country.
Initially, I will say I did not agree with him. And then I started seeing that he was not afraid to speak his mind. And I noticed that he was not scared to say what he felt, regardless of what people would say. And I think I respect that about him.
So you liked his kind of brashness, his personality?
Yeah, I would say yes.
For some reason, so many were able to convince themselves, oh, not me.
Mario and Mireya both crossed the border illegally as teenagers, but became citizens under President Ronald Reagan's amnesty. They see themselves as different from migrants crossing the border today. In what way do you think they're different?
The people that are coming here are the criminals, you know? The ones that did something bad in their country, they're running away from their law.
Despite having close family members who are undocumented,
Migrant invasion.
they don't believe they'll end up in Trump's crosshairs. When you hear Trump promise mass deportations, do you worry about them?
Yes and no. Because the ones that I know, they're doing good. They're not breaking any law.
Now, I, for one, outlined the litany of ways MAGA has told you they don't distinguish among you.
America is for Americans and Americans only.
But apparently, since that didn't work, Trump just went and told you exactly what it was.
Let me ask you about another group of people, the estimated 4 million families in America who have mixed immigration status. So I'm talking about parents who might be here illegally, but the kids are here legally. Your borders are
You're talking about separation?
Yeah, well, I mean, there are two aspects to this. Your borders are, Tom Homan said, they can be deported together.
Did Tom Homan, did he really say that?
We have seen one estimate that says it would cost $88 billion to deport 1 million people a year.
I don't know if that's accurate or not.
Is that what American taxpayers should expect?
What price do you put on national security? Is that worth it?
Is there a way to carry out mass deportation without separating families?
Of course there is. Families can be deported together.
Well, surely Trump is going to clean this up.
Your border czar Tom Homan said they can be deported together.
Correct.
Is that the plan?
Well, that way you keep well, I don't want to be breaking up families, so the only way you don't break up the family is you keep them together, and you have to send them all back.
Even kids who are here legally?
Well, what you going to do if they want to stay with the father? Look.
He said even if they want to stay with the father. So my man who said that he did not regret his support of Trump, even if he's deported, because he wants better for his kids. Ooh, that's not going to land well with him.
We have to have rules and regulations. You can always find something out like, this doesn't work, that doesn't work. I'll tell you what's going to be horrible. When we take a wonderful young woman who's with a criminal, and they show the woman, and she could stay by the law, but they show the woman being taken out, or they want her out, and your cameras are focused on her as she's crying, as she's being taken out of our country, and then the public turns against us. But we have to do our job.
And that apparently is your job. I would also say on the wings of that, they have also been granted the ability to stop and investigate folks who look like they don't belong. That's right. Those who appear Latino. That came out pre-election. That's what apparently we were fine with pre-election, is for them to just stop whoever based on appearances. So they can stop whoever based on appearances. And now if there's any sort of mixed status, they can toss out the entire family. You tell me what that looks like and how that was something that people were able to convince themselves was okay to put on the red hat and parade around the Latino community. Man, there's a very expensive price for that machismo, sexism / racism that afflicted Kamala Harris, apparently.
There's still a lot of machismo. There's still a lot of misogyny. And something that we need to say aloud is there's a lot of anti-blackness.
Now, just in case you thought it was all good because you were born here.
You've promised to end birthright citizenship on day one. Is that still your plan?
Yeah, absolutely.
The 14th Amendment, though, says that, quote, all persons born in the United States are citizens. Can you get around the 14th Amendment with an executive action?
We're going to have to get a change. We'll maybe have to go back to the people, but we have to end it. We're the only country that has it.
Through an executive action?
We're the only country that has it. Do you know, if somebody sets a foot, just a foot, 1 foot, you don't need to, on our land, congratulations, you are now a citizen of the United States of America. Yes, we're going to end that because it's ridiculous.
Through executive action?
Well, if we can, through executive action. I was going to do it through executive action, but then we had to fix COVID first, to be honest with you.
It is remarkable his ability to live in a world of his own creation. Like, he really, first of all, we're not the only country that has birthright citizenship, and that is definitely not how it works. But if you ask me to choose whether or not he is knowingly lying or whether or not he really thinks that's how it works, I'm split. I'm really split. Also, as an aside, I saw where he was just given an award for Patriot of the Year. So this man was given an award for the Patriot of the Year and is so willingly able to go against all prior precedent when it comes to his handling of a great number of things. But specifically, we're talking about immigration here, but yet he can be the Patriot of the Year. I mean, he just had an incident at Arlington Cemetery a few months ago, but yeah, Patriot of the Year. let's see how the Patriot of the Year actually plans on handling those immigrants that are being deported.
He has promised the biggest removal of migrants in American history, and now new reporting is detailing the specifics of his plan. NBC News exclusive reporting that the incoming administration has prepared to deport migrants to countries on a list if their home countries refuse to accept them. Adding, quote, the plans could mean that thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of migrants would be permanently displaced in countries where they do not know any of the people or the language and have no connection to the culture.
That's right. This man is willing to send people to countries they have never been to before. Now, what could be the reason for such drastic measures? Like, what could be the reason for it? Because the economics of it are terrible.
Undocumented workers do some of America's hardest, most essential jobs. Jobs most Americans don't want. They grow our crops, process our meat, build our homes, take care of our sick and elderly, and haul our trash. It's estimated that 3/4 of all undocumented immigrants in the workforce are essential workers. Roughly half of America's farm workers are undocumented. If they were to suddenly disappear because they were deported or went into hiding, we could face a national food shortage. Over 1.5 million undocumented immigrants work in construction, often as day laborers. Losing them would result in immediate project delays and fewer available houses. That means higher rents and more expensive homes. The food service, hospitality, and caregiving industries also rely on undocumented workers who do some of the lowest paid yet most crucial jobs. And the cost of the deportation itself is hard to fathom. Estimates range from $40 billion to $600 billion. And don't forget the lost tax revenue. Undocumented immigrants pay roughly $12 billion a year in taxes, much of it going to programs they themselves can't benefit from because of their undocumented status, like Social Security.
In fact, it gets worse than that.
How many people is Trump talking about deporting? Well, he says 10 million, he says 20 million, he says 30 million undocumented people. There's not actually that many undocumented people in the country. The study uses a very research-based number, 13.3 million. This number doesn't include people who came to the U.S. through parole programs. They are here legally. Trump still wants to deport them as well. And also, Trump wants to deport now naturalized citizens as well. This is something called remigration. You should Google it. But again, this study just looks at undocumented people, 13.3 million of them. Now, the first thing to know is that we have no system in place for going out and rounding up all of those people. That doesn't exist. ICE doesn't do that. They find undocumented people when they come into the law enforcement system. So that system would need to be created out of whole cloth. So going into communities and arresting people turns out to be extremely expensive. ICE would need to hire about 31,000 more agents, and this part, just the arresting, would cost about $7 billion a year. So next is the cost of actually detaining these people, because we only right now have the capacity to detain about 40,000 undocumented people at a time. So what Trump wants to do would require detaining about 1 million people at a time, and that would require them to build massive tent structures down by the border. Those are incredibly expensive to build. Then there's the cost of legal proceedings, because before someone can be deported, there has to be a removal order. That's a court case. That's the law. There are already 3.7 million cases pending in immigration court, so you would have to hire new ICE prosecutors, new courtrooms, new staff, new judges. Then there is the cost of removal itself, and this is setting aside the logistical difficulties that half of the countries these people come from will not take them back. So we have to find third countries that will take them. Hugely difficult. Then the cost. So the ICE director in a hearing last year said that one single flight hour of an ICE deportation flight costs $17,000. So multiply that by these millions of people. They're saying the removal process, the average flight cost, ground transportation, all that, $21 billion to remove 1 million immigrants annually. They also said to bear in mind that right now there is a plane shortage, there is a pilot shortage. We have never in the history of our country deported more than 230,000 people in a year, ever. But Trump is saying that we're going to do 10 million in a year? It is logistically impossible. For all the reasons I've just stated, it cannot actually happen. But let's say that it could. These people decided to analyze what would that cost. Let's say you could do it. And they found it would cost $350 billion just for the deportation, not its impact on the economy. So then they analyzed it the other way. Let's say they do 1 million people a year. How much is that going to cost? Well, it turns out that is 3 times as expensive. Now, again, this is much more likely the way they'd have to do it. If we did it that way, how much would it cost? $967.9 billion, almost $1 trillion, and that's if inflation stays at 2.9%, which if Trump is elected, it won't. And of course, there are the costs to the morale and the psyche of the country, the mass trauma that will be caused by the family separations. Law enforcement, military, National Guard, moving through cities, going into households, ripping apart, because remember, many of these families are mixed, right? Undocumented people live with citizens. Their children are citizens. So we're talking mass family separation, and also our law enforcement and our military being focused not on their jobs, but on this massive deportation. Now let's look at what it will do to our economy. Our GDP would shrink by between $1.1 and $2.2 trillion. That's between 4 and 6% shrinkage in our GDP. 4.3% shrinkage was what we had during the Great Recession. So we're looking at a recession. Tax revenues will fall $29 billion in the states and $46 billion federal taxes gone. Undocumented immigrants also contribute $22.6 billion to Social Security and $5.7 billion to Medicare. All that money gone. And think about this. Construction and agriculture are both going to lose 1 in 8 workers. Think about what that's going to do to housing prices and food prices. Hospitality is going to lose 1 in 14 workers. Think about what that's going to do to tourism. The restaurant industry will be gutted, and childcare, forget it.
Now, in the face of all that, there must be a good reason for such an aggressive stance.
So we had 11,000 and 13,000 different estimates, 13,099 murderers released into our country over the last 3 years. They're walking down the streets. They're walking next to you and your family, and they're very dangerous.
The 13,000 figure, I think, goes back about 40 years.
No, it doesn't. No,
that
it's within the 3-year period.
figure.
It's during the Biden term. No, that was a fiction that they put that out. This was done by the Border Patrol. It's 13,099, and it's during the Biden period of time. And these are murderers.
Now, you remember that comment I just made about living in a world of his own? Here we have it. We have seen him throw away actual crime statistics in favor of numbers in his own head a litany of times before, certainly with regards to Biden and the exploding crime and all the cities that are on fire. I think he said my block had been eliminated and devastated months ago in DC. DC really shouldn't exist anymore by virtue of all the times that he said that it was on fire.
We will take over the horribly run capital of our nation in Washington, D.C., and clean it up, renovate it, and rebuild our capital city so that it's no longer a nightmare of murder and crime.
This is something that he, in fact, loves to do. So it's not about the reality. It's about the case that he can prosecute to his base. And I would also like, as an aside, to raise the point, in the face of this obsession with migrant crime, which I did a whole video about migrant crime. The thesis of that was, I can't imagine a scenario where you're less likely to commit crime than when you're in a place you're not supposed to be. Because everybody knows when you're in a place you're not supposed to be, the first thing you want to do is draw the attention of law enforcement, right? That is always what you want to do. And the statistics back that up. But that aside, the reality of migrant crime aside, I, for one, as a black person, have to think about all the litany of black victims of crimes that don't ever get nearly this much attention. Apparently, it has to come at the hands of a migrant for them to get placards for Fox News to parade around ad nauseum. Now, I'll also say I am in favor of having a strong border, strong national security, but that's not what this is. You know, from the man who has already said he's willing and planning to pardon all of the January 6th defendants and threatening to put the committee members in jail.
And Cheney was behind it. And so was Benny Thompson and everybody on that committee. For what they did, honestly, they should go to jail.
So you think Liz Cheney should go to jail?
For what they did.
Everyone on the committee, you think
I think everybody anybody that voted in favor.
Are you going to direct your FBI director and your attorney general to send them to jail?
Not at all. I think that they'll have to look at that.
Yeah, you have lost the ability to tell me this is about national security. This is about something else entirely.
Part of this is coming out of fear because we're moving closer and closer to that day where the white European Christian is the minority or the new minority when you add up all the other minorities. So they're losing power and they're trying to stop that as well.
But then again, that's not new information. At least to me, it's not. But what blows my mind is how many people this apparently is new information to and what difference they might have made if it wasn't.